So we need to talk about what might actually be the most expensive lunch in the history of contract law.
Oh, yeah. It is a very specific scene to set right off the bat.
It really is. So
Yeah.
picture this. You are sitting at a fancy white tablecloth restaurant. You have just finished a lobster meal.
Which is already a great start to the day.
Right. I mean, who doesn't love a lobster lunch? And you are moving on to dessert, hot blueberry pie. But across the table, your friend is sighing.
And not just a little polite sigh either.
No, it is the kind of deep chest-rattling sigh that suggests the weight of the entire world is just crushing his shoulders.
It creates a very particular mood. It really does.
Yeah, and when you ask him what is wrong, instead of telling you, he looks you right in the eye and accuses you of being too self-absorbed to notice his suffering.
It is a total masterclass in deflection.
It really is. But in this specific case, which comes to us from the account of a man named George, that sigh is the opening act for one of the most bizarre case studies on systemic risk I've ever seen.
It really is this fascinating intersection. We're looking at a source text today that recounts the life and the very peculiar high-probability death of a man named Vissarion Johnson.
And on the surface, I mean, it reads like a ghost story.
It does. But for the purpose of this deep dive, we're treating George's account as a factual record. And when you do that, it stops being a ghost story and starts being a literal lesson in economics.
Exactly. We are viewing this as a case study in contractual loopholes and really the absolute ruthlessness of probability.
Right.
So our mission today is to unpack the story of the invincible economist, a man who tried to arbitrage a mathematical death curse, only to find out that the universe and syntax can be incredibly unforgiving.
Unforgiving is the perfect word for it.
So let's look at the principal actor here. Who exactly was Vissarion Johnson?
So Vissarion was, by all accounts, a titan, not just of industry, but specifically of Wall Street. He was an MIT graduate described in the text as someone who could write jaw-dropping equations with an unwavering hand.
I love that image. Unwavering hand. It implies the supreme confidence in his math.
Precisely. And he used that confidence to master the study of random fluctuations in the stock market. I mean, he earned the nickname the Jackal of Wall Street.
Which is quite a title.
It is. His predictions were eerily accurate. If he said stocks would go up, they went up. If he said they'd crash, they crashed. Or at least his clients didn't lose much.
Now, hold on a second. This is where I want to push back just a little on the genius label.
Okay, go ahead.
Was he actually a mathematical genius who cracked the code of the market? Or was he something else? Because George, our primary source, suggests Vissarion's success wasn't really about the numbers at all. It was about psychology.
You are hitting on the exact key distinction there. George notes that Vissarion had a very specific talent for government work. He never, ever told a powerful person something they didn't want to hear.
Which is basically a survival mechanism.
All right. It is the ultimate survival skill of the political economist. George shares a very telling anecdote, a joke really that Vissarion used to tell to explain his profession. It perfectly frames his worldview regarding truth.
Oh, I have this right here. This is a classic. So the story goes, President Reagan is working on the federal budget, and he hits a snag. He needs to know what 2 times 2 is.
As one does.
Right. So he calls in a physicist. He asks, what is 2 times 2? The physicist replies immediately, 4, Mr. President.
Rigid, factual, completely useless for politics.
Exactly. So then he asks a statistician. The statistician checks his charts and says, Mr. President, a sampling of 4th graders suggests a mean value reasonably close to 4.
Better, but it lacks the certainty a leader wants.
Right. So finally he calls in the economist Vissarion. He asks, what is 2 times 2? The economist gets up, closes the blinds, looks around the room to make sure absolutely no one is listening, leans in close, and whispers, how much do you want it to be?
And that encapsulates Vissarion Johnson perfectly. He understood that in the upper echelons of power, truth is just an asset class that can be leveraged.
Wow, yeah.
His ultimate goal wasn't just wealth, it was position. He wanted to be the chief economist of the United States.
So we're talking chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors.
Correct. The person who whispers in the president's ear regarding trade and labor and banking. Vissarion wanted to be the invisible hand that moved the president's hand.
But to get there, he needed a credential. He needed to join an organization with a very peculiar name, the Club of Diminishing Returns.
The CDR.
Now, in economics, diminishing returns is the point where the level of profits or benefits gained is less than the amount of money or energy invested. It basically means you are losing momentum. Why would anyone name an elite club that?
Honestly, irony maybe. Hubris. It was also known by the nickname voodoo economics. but membership guaranteed influence in the federal government. So when the chairmanship opened up, Vissarion was thrilled. It was his stepping stone to the White House.
But then being a data guy, he decided to run the numbers on the previous chairman.
And this is where the story shifts from a career drama to a full-on statistical thriller. He finds a pattern.
A completely lethal statistical anomaly.
Yes. Vissarion noticed that every past chairman died of natural causes, but the timing formed a perfect geometric progression.
Let's walk through this sequence because it is chilling.
Okay, so the first chairman served for 32 years. He died at age 96. A good long run.
Okay, 32 years.
The second chairman served for 16 years.
Half as long.
The third chairman, 8 years.
4 years for the next one.
Exactly. The fourth chairman lasted 4 years. And the fifth chairman, who had just died to create this vacancy, served exactly 2 years.
So the sequence is 32, 16, 8, 4, 2. It is halving every single time.
Which means mathematically the next term in the sequence is
1.
Vissarion realized that if he accepted the chairmanship, he wasn't just taking a job.
Yeah.
He was signing a contract with death. He believed he was mathematically destined to die in exactly 1 year.
Now, a rational actor say that physicists from the joke would simply decline the job. They would say, I value my life more than this title.
Right.
But Vissarion doesn't do that.
No, because his utility function is skewed. He values the power of the chief economist position more than the risk. He sees the chairmanship as a necessary sunk cost. He simply cannot walk away.
So he decides to hedge the risk.
Yes. He goes to his friend George for help. And George, being a man of very specific connections, decides this isn't a job for a lawyer or a bodyguard. This is a job for Azazel.
Okay, we have to unpack Azazel. Because in the source material, this isn't your typical crossroads demon playing a fiddle. This feels more like interdimensional bureaucracy.
That's a really great way to put it. George describes Azazel as a 2-centimeter-tall being. Possibly an alien, possibly a demon. It's left somewhat ambiguous. But George can summon him. And when he summons him this time, Azazel is absolutely furious.
He's described as being yellow with rage. His horns are trembling. His tail is twitching. And the reason is so incredibly petty, George interrupted his gambling game.
A high-stakes game involving zoffles and rails.
Which we have no idea what those are.
None at all. Alien currency, probably. Apparently, Azazel had a winning hand and was about to clean up. George pulled him out right before the big win.
I love that George doesn't even apologize. He just pivots immediately to emotional manipulation. He brings up Azazel's poor middle mother.
Which works instantly. Azazel just bursts into soprano sobs. It's a very funny image, this tiny high-tech demon weeping over his middle mother. But once he calms down, he agrees to help to honor her memory. George lays out the data. The sequence 32-16-8-4-2.
And this is where the story shifts again. Azazel looks at the death sequence, and he doesn't say, oh, that's just a coincidence. He validates it.
He calls it a law of nature. And this is a crucial concept. In Azazel's worldview, statistical patterns like this aren't random. They are the literal gears of the universe turning. He even quotes a poet from his world, Purvos Fiat, about how nature's ways are hidden.
So the curse is real. It's a fundamental law like gravity or thermodynamics.
Exactly. And Azazel says he can't break a law of nature just like you can't switch off gravity. But he can interfere with it. He tells George he can manipulate the probabilities so that nothing on Earth can harm Vissarion for that specific year.
Nothing on Earth. That is the very specific phrasing of the verbal contract.
That is the promise. He says he needs 2 or 3 days to set it up because, hilariously, he's currently busy with a female of his species who is obsessed with him.
The work-life balance of a tiny demon is surprisingly complex.
It really is. But the deal is struck. Azazel needs a few days to install the protection.
But Vissarion is an economist. He needs verification. You don't buy a derivative without checking the underlying asset. He needs to know he's actually invincible.
So Azazel gives George a very practical instruction for the testing phase. He says, push him under a truck.
And George, being the kind of friend we all apparently need, actually does it.
He does.
Yeah.
A few days later, George accidentally trips Vissarion into heavy traffic.
Just casual attempted vehicular manslaughter.
For science. And the result is spectacular. 3 cars crash. They're completely flattened. It's a massive pileup. But Vissarion, he's just standing there. His hair is messy, his glasses are crooked, and he has a grease stain on his pants, but not a single scratch on him.
And his reaction isn't, George, you maniac, you pushed me.
No. His reaction is pure ecstasy. He yells, it didn't even graze me. This is the moment where Vissarion succumbs to what economists call moral hazard.
Let's define that for the listener really quick. Moral hazard is when a person takes on more risk because they know someone else is bearing the cost of that risk. Like a bank that knows the government will bail it out.
Exactly. Vissarion realizes he is too big to fail in a physical sense. He has supernatural insurance, so his risk tolerance just goes through the roof.
He goes on a massive power trip.
Huge. He accepts the chairmanship, he quintuples his consultation fees. And why shouldn't he? He's the man who cannot be hurt. There's a scene where he stands in freezing rain without a coat and just refuses to get sick.
My favorite is the mugger story.
Oh, yes. A mugger pulls a knife on him, demands cash. The old Vissarion, the rational actor, would have handed it over. The new invincible Vissarion just casually kicks the mugger in the groin and keeps walking.
Incredible.
He is living his best life. He feels completely safe because he knows mathematically and supernaturally he has 1 full year of total immunity.
And that year passes. A perfect year. Success, money, health. The moral hazard paid off.
Which brings us to the anniversary. Exactly 1 year later. It's a beautiful Indian summer day. George and Vissarion meet on a park bench.
The mood is triumphant. Vissarion has beaten the curse. He's survived the year. And he pulls out a thick envelope from the White House.
This is it, the payoff. He has been appointed chief economist. He has the letter right in his hand. He looks at George and says he's reached the pinnacle of his dreams.
And then, zing.
A sound like a zing and a quick flash of light.
And Vissarion Johnson slumps over. Dead.
Instantly. Blood on his shirt.
Now pause here. Because George is sitting right next to him. The police arrive. It looks like a sniper shot.
It absolutely does, but there's no bullet. There's no shooter found. And George is cleared of suspicion because witnesses saw he was just sitting there holding nothing but a lunch bill. So the police are completely baffled. It's a locked room mystery, but outdoors.
But George figures it out. Or rather, he finds the evidence.
He does. While the chaos is happening, George looks at the wooden bench right behind where Vissarion was sitting. There's a small hole. He digs into it with a penknife and pulls out a small, dark object. And it's warm.
It's a meteorite.
A tiny pebble-sized meteorite. It came hurtling down from space, struck Vissarion in the heart with the force of a high-caliber round, passed right through him and embedded itself in the bench.
This is the twist. This is the ultimate black swan event.
Exactly. In economics, a black swan is an unpredictable event that has a massive impact. But this wasn't just random. This was a contractual loophole.
Because Azazel promised that nothing on Earth would harm him.
And Azazel kept his promise. Literally, a truck is on Earth, a mugger is on Earth, a virus is on Earth. But a meteorite, that is not of this Earth. It is extraterrestrial. It comes from the heavens.
It is a semantic trap.
It is the ultimate fine print. George even quotes Shakespeare to explain it. There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, implying that Azazel's protection covered the earth jurisdiction but left the heaven jurisdiction wide open.
That is just devastating. So the curse of the Club of Diminishing Returns, the sequence 32, 16, 8, 4, 2, 1, it actually held up. The law of nature was stronger than the demon's protection. Or rather, the universe found a way to execute the law without violating the demon's contract.
Precisely. Vissarion died exactly 1 year into his term. The sequence was preserved perfectly.
So Vissarion is dead. George is left holding the bag and the meteorite. What does he do with this information?
Well, George decides to keep the meteorite a secret. He just buries it in his pocket. He felt that being the first human in history confirmed to be killed by a meteorite was just too much of a novelty. It would overshadow Vissarion's reputation as a serious economist.
He wanted his friend to be remembered for his bad advice, not his bad luck.
In a very George kind of way, yes. But the real structural problem remains. The club. The curse didn't end with Vissarion. The math says the next term in the sequence after 1 is 0.5, so the next chairman should have died in 6 months.
And the one after that in 3 months, then 1.5 months. It would have become a complete massacre. The churn rate would be entirely unsustainable.
It would have. But George reveals that the club finally got wise. They realized that the variable controlling this lethal pattern was the name itself, the Club of Diminishing Returns.
This brings us to the concept of nominative determinism, the idea that the name determines the outcome.
In this universe, absolutely. The name dictated the reality. Diminishing returns implies a curve approaching zero, as long as they called themselves that they were trapped in that mathematical function, so they held a vote and rebranded.
And just change the name.
They changed the name to the Club of Random Distribution, or CRD.
Club of Random Distribution. That is so dry. It sounds like a textbook chapter.
It is dry, but it's safe. Random distribution implies no pattern, no predictable sequence, no halving, And George confirms it worked. The chairman who took over after Vissarion under the new name has been in office for 10 years and is perfectly healthy.
So they literally editorialized their way out of a death curse.
They changed the label, and the universe adjusted its laws to match the new label. It's a really profound commentary on how we define our own reality. If you define a system as diminishing, it will diminish. If you define it as random, you get variance, but you don't get a predetermined doom.
That is a powerful lesson in branding. Now, speaking of character and rational actors, we have to talk about how the story, or rather the lunch, ends. Because George tells this tragic, mind-bending story to the narrator.
And then immediately uses the narrator's stunned silence to pull a fast one. The waiter brings the change from the bill. George scoops it all up into his handkerchief silver, and Bill says a breezy goodbye and just walks out, leaving the narrator to pay for the lobster, the blueberry pie, and the wine.
He steals the change.
He does. It perfectly encapsulates George. He is the ultimate rational actor in the economic sense. He is maximizing his own utility at the expense of others. He's a man who deals with demons and death curses, but he's never too busy to score a free lunch.
Truly a smooth operator. So looking at this whole case, The Invincible Economist, what are we really learning here? Besides, don't trust demons with semantics.
I think there are three major layers here. First, there's the hubris of modeling. Vissarion thought he could model the world and control it. He thought he could negotiate with reality just like he negotiated with the president. But reality, whether it's a market crash or a meteorite, always has the final say.
You cannot spin a meteorite.
He cannot spin a meteorite. Secondly, it's about systemic risk and loopholes. Vissarion felt safe because of the phrasing "nothing on Earth." We often look for guarantees in life, for ironclad contracts, but we often miss the context. We focus on the text and ignore the environment, the heavens, so to speak. He ignored the black swan because it wasn't in his contract.
And finally, that point about the club's name change really sticks with me.
It's the strongest point, honestly. The Club of Diminishing Returns doomed itself by its own definition. When they became the Club of Random Distribution, they broke the cycle. It suggests that the narratives we construct for ourselves or our organizations can become self-fulfilling prophecies.
If you call your project The Struggle, don't be surprised when it's hard.
Exactly. Or if you call your team the Chaos Agents, don't be surprised when you can't get organized. The labels really do matter.
Well, that gives me a lot to think about regarding what I've named my various Wi-Fi networks.
As it should.
Before we sign off, I want to leave you, the listener, with something to think about. We've talked about how the club changed their fate by changing their name.
Right.
So here's a question. If the labels we apply to our organizations, our roles, or even our daily habits actually dictate their reality, what laws of nature are you accidentally inviting into your own life just by how you name them? Are you living in a club of diminishing returns of your own making?
And if you are, maybe it's time for a rebrand.
Just watch out for falling rocks while you do it. Thanks for listening to this deep dive.
Stay safe.